Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this first session in our 6-week series on zooming in on your job search. As a brief introduction, my name is Susan Pack. I'm the Director of Career Services here at WVU Tech. I'll be walking you through this first session on how it's all relevant, how to build a better resume. When we dive in, we're going to start at really what is the basics of resumes. So what are the different types of resumes? And what you'll see in general there are two different types of resumes. The first one is in a chronological format, and it is the most preferred by recruiters and HR representatives. If you come in to career services, this is the format we are going to talk to you about. So work experience is the focus of the resume, but employment history is listed in reverse order. So that's the thing we're really going to focus on, not just work history or employment history, but also education, that it's listed in reversed order, with most recent being listed first. So someone isn't going to have to wade 7 years in to find what you're doing now. It's going to be listed first. The second type of resume is a functional or skill format. It highlights your skills and accomplishments, and skills areas are clustered under subheadings. So again, we do, if you come into career services, focus on the chronological format because, again, it's the most preferred by recruiters and HR representatives. So we're going to make sure we're giving you the best start that we can. Once you've determined which type of resume you're going to use, either chronological or functional or skill, what you're going to want to look at is formatting your resume. So there are some things to keep in mind just when it comes to formatting, and we'll look at them now. So the first one is preferred fonts. I know that there's a lot of stigma around fonts, and some being old fonts versus new fonts and the look and all of that, but I'm just going to remind you that some people don't have access to all fonts. Even if you send your file in as a PDF, it's just a good standard rule of thumb to use one of these 4 fonts, which are Times New Roman, Arial, Garment, or Georgia. So those would be the ones that would be, again, the most recommended fonts to use on your resume. With your font size, you want it to be no smaller than 10 points and no larger than 12. If you are shrinking your font to a size 8, either you need to go to a second page or you need to evaluate what's on your resume. It may be getting too long. If you have it at a size 8, trust me, people can't read it. So even 10 is a little hard, but you can go down to 10 up to 12. Headings. So if you, let's say, do education, experience, or relevant experience, whichever you want to call it, that can be up to 14 points. And then your name can be as large as 25 points. You're going to want your name, of course, to stand out more than anything else. With margins, they can be typically 1 inch or ½ inch. You don't want to go smaller than a ½ inch because if an HR representative or whoever is conducting your interview prints that off, it could cut off edges of it. But if you find that you've got a page and maybe a quarter of a resume, a lot of times if you switch that over to the ½ inch, then you're going to see that it will actually fit. So just keep that in mind. And then typical length should be 1 to 2 full pages. In most cases, for everyone who's coming fresh out of their undergrad, you should be at 1 page unless you've been published or you have been doing presentations, then you would be at that 1 page length. We'll talk about a little bit more how you can kind of measure and decide what you can take out to get to that length. So now that we've decided what our resume is going to look like, are we doing it chronological or skills format, what kind of font and what sizes we're going to use, we're going to look at the information that you're actually going to include on your resume. The first thing, of course, is your contact information. When it comes to contact information, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. You need to do some research to determine how you are sending this and exactly what they're looking for. You're always going to include your name, your phone number, and your email address. When it comes to your mailing address, that's a thing that can either be kind of like a take it or leave it. Some people list their mailing address, some don't. If you're including a cover letter, it's not a bad idea to include your mailing address, but when you are by including an address, a mailing address. If you, let's say we're in Beckley, West Virginia, but you're looking to move to San Diego, California, they could see your address, and then the recruiter is automatically calculating, okay, so what is it going to cost to have A, B, and C happen? What is this? What is that? Are we going to have to charge relocation? Are we going to get charged? Or are they going to try to negotiate that? So those are things to keep in mind. And we do have an upcoming session specifically on cover letters, but you can address that you are looking to move in a cover letter, but you can't in a resume. So what some people have started doing is they've been eliminating their address and including their LinkedIn profile. So that's something that you could include. As a note, on LinkedIn profiles and email addresses, you need to make those so they're clickable, because even though there are some people that will print out resumes, in most cases, everyone is going for a digital format now. So if you make it so they can't actually click that, then it makes it a little simpler, easier for them to send you an email, look at your LinkedIn profile, and it also shows you're proficient in doing things like linking your email address and doing things like that, maybe you're saying you're skilled in Microsoft Office, but then you don't link things. It does show, okay, I do have skills in Microsoft Office. And you can see on here, it also talks about evergreen, which just means making sure you've got something in there that you can be contacted at for a long time. You don't want to list a phone number that you send in and then not have that phone number anymore. Also, your contact information should be appropriate. Keep your email address and your voicemail message professional. I give an example that it used to be a very trendy thing for voicemail messages that you call and the phone would pick up and someone would say, hello, hello. So you're on the other end going, hello, this is Susan, and all of that. And it turns out there's nobody there. It's just a joke. You don't want a voicemail like that. Make sure you've got it set up. Don't have it set up to the caller at number 304-555-5555 is not available. Please leave your voicemail. Actually have your voicemail set up. So just a couple of tips with that. And this is just a glance. If you look at these two email addresses, you can see one is the first name dot last name at gmail.com. So that would be a professional email address. Whereas the second one, if you look really close, it looks like it says Golden Bears Love Beer at gmail.com. So that would, of course, be inappropriate. Moving on from contact, we're going to be looking at education. In most cases, when you come to career services again as an undergrad, this is the format we're going to follow: is contact, education, experience. So that's just kind of keeping it in mind. So in your education, you're going to include your degree, major, name of institute, location, grad year, GPA, and relevant coursework. GPA and relevant coursework are debatable. So GPA, it matters what your GPA is. If it's above 3.0, it's normally okay to include it. Also, if an employer happens to list that you have to have a GPA of maybe 2.5 or something like that to apply for the job, and you have that, then you want to include that. If it's below that, you may just want to leave it off. It's not that there's anything wrong with that GPA. It's just that it's just the rule of thumb that if it's 3.0 or above, you include. If not, you don't. With relevant coursework, you do, again, need to make sure it's relevant and just kind of be able to explain, why is this relevant? Don't just list 20 classes you've had that were about like mechanical engineering or about business administration. Oh, I had all of these classes. Okay, well, why is that relevant to the job you are applying to? For new grads, again, education appears near the top of the resume. You want to include your grad date, your date of graduation. We normally suggest either expected or anticipated. So anticipated May of 2021 would be what you would list on there. You wouldn't list a date range of what you're going. And then again, you can see what we had already said about the relevant coursework. Here are just a couple examples of the education and how they can look. I do want to mention, if you are one of our ABET accredited programs here at WVU Tech, you want to make sure you include that like we have here. You can also see on the first line of education, we have West Virginia University Institute of Technology with WVU Tech in parentheses. And that is because for the rest of my resume, I'm going to refer to it as WVU Tech, so I don't have to write out the whole thing. You just have to make sure you're consistent with what you're doing. You do want to write it out once, and you can write it out repeatedly. But again, it's just be consistent with what you are sending everyone. And then you can see some relevant coursework here. With experience, you're going to include, and that's the next section, the name of the organization, title / experience, location, and the dates that you have done that experience. description of the experience. When you're building your description, which is bullet points, what you want to do is what you did, how you did it, what you accomplished. So I give the example of when I was 20, I worked at McDonald's, and I could include something like I could have put that I was one of the kitchen staff. And while I was a kitchen staff, I fried hamburgers. So I could have put fry hamburgers as one of the things under my description. Or I could say responsible for food quantity management to ensure availability to meet customer orders. So it's just the way you phrase it, but you can see why the second thing I said sounds so much better than fry hamburgers. List again in reverse chronological order. And just as a reminder, internships, co-ops, full and part-time jobs, and volunteer experience can all go here, but depending on the position and circumstance, sometimes they will have on a new grad resume, you'll have two experience sections. One is relevant and one is additional. So you can kind of show, okay, I do have experience, which sometimes you'll want to have that additional to speak to your soft skills. So maybe it is your volunteer experience or your experience. Maybe you're the president of one of the student organizations on campus, and you want to talk about how you communicate and how you coordinate and how you build teamwork and all of that. That's a great place to put those in. Here's some tips with the experience section. Again, use relevant work history as much as possible. You can see in this of that graphic, we have what you think is important, what they think is important, and what's actually relevant. So just kind of keep that in mind. Don't include information beyond the last year or so of high school. It's great if you were a savant in the 8th grade, but it's not relevant once you are 8 years past that. So just something to keep in mind. Use industry terminology, but avoid using acronyms and abbreviations, because in most cases, your resume will eventually get to someone, if you get far enough in the interview process, that will know what those acronyms mean. But first, it may go through someone like me, like a human resources person who has no idea what ASME, ASCE is. So the first thing you do is you go and you try to Google it to figure out what it is. And it may not be what it, like I may find something, because there are all kinds of organizations out there that use acronyms. So I may not find what you actually are trying to represent it. Never use pronouns such as I, me, my, we, or ours. So you wouldn't say I was responsible for ... You would say responsible for ... Use the employment ad to match your skills to the job requirements. This is, again, just tying it back to being relevant. So what are they looking for, and making sure that your resume is matching as much as it can. And again, if you don't have work history, think about incorporating other areas such as service, campus involvement, research projects, and athletic involvement. Here are two examples of non-traditional experience. So you can see we've got an athletics example and also an intern example to kind of explain these two things and show you. Next up is the skills section. Skills can include both technical and soft skills, so computer and or software, language proficiency, and that is one I want to mention. If you are one of our international students and you speak a second language, make sure you're including that on your resume. It's one that we don't see. Or maybe I had someone come in and they're trilingual. So make sure you're listing all of the languages you speak. In the United States, of course, Spanish is one that is highly desired, but there are additional languages that are also desired within the United States. Your communication, also mechanical and knowledge of specific tools, again, keeping this relevant. It's great that you have learned to use all kinds of different tools while in college, but you may have some examples in there that it's not relevant to what you're actually applying for. And also project management and leadership skills. Some additional resume sections that you may see are volunteer experience, technical skills, research projects, publications and conference presentations, professional affiliations, honors and awards, leadership activities. When these are included, you are more likely to get to that second page, but don't force it. If your resume feels good at one page, you are not required to include every single thing you've done. Again, you're keeping your resume relevant to what you're using it for. What not to include can sometimes be as important as what you should include. So make sure you're not including your salary history. The reason you wouldn't want to do this is because it makes it so you can't negotiate to the level that you could if they didn't know. If someone knows your salary history was at your previous job, you were paid $30,000, and maybe you're applying for a job where you should be compensated $80,000, but they're like, oh, well, we'll give you 50. And that's $20,000 more than what you were making, but it's not what you should be paid. So again, don't include your salary history, hobbies, citizenship status, birth date, or names of references. I will pause to mention, when it comes to references, you should have a different document that already has your references that you have already talked to people and say, hey, would it be okay if I used you as a reference? I'm applying for this job and all of that, but this shouldn't be on your resume. If you happen to be doing a CV instead of a resume, then you would actually include that information in there. So you would actually have your references on a CV, but you do not have them on a resume. If you have any questions about a CV, reach out to Career Services. We're happy to help. Finally, we just want to end with a few additional quick tips. The first, and one that we see most come through Career Services, is verbs. Make sure you are using the right verb tense if you are doing it right now. It's a present tense verb. So it's not going to be evaluated, assisted, developed. It's develop, assist, evaluate. So just keep that in mind. If it happened and you're not doing it anymore, it's a past tense verb. We have a large list of action verbs that we can provide you from Career Services to help you determine, okay, which of these verbs am I going to use? What best conveys what I am trying to say to the employer and all of that. Save it correctly. Do not send your resume as a Word document. You want to send it as a PDF. This comes back to making sure your resume looks the way that you intended for it to look. So by saving it as a PDF, you're going to have it like locked in. Let's say you send it to me as Word and I have Word 93 and I open it up and there's all kinds of things that aren't recognized. So you get those little square boxes and you can't see anything. So I would just discard you immediately. So it's just, or your resume, not you, your resume immediately. So just keep that in mind, save it and send it as a PDF. Same thing with a cover letter. Again, we have a session coming up on cover letters. Be on the lookout for that. Keep it simple. It's great to have those creative designs, and you'll see a large selection of templates in Word where they've got different colors and shapes and all of that. It's just, there's not a reason to do that. You can just keep it simple, go with a basic format. Unless you happen to be in the artistic fields, and then you are conveying like this is an artistic way. It's almost part of your portfolio. So something to keep in mind. But we do have a large selection of templates available on the Career Services site on the WVU Tech website. So very large selection of those selected templates that you can download and use for free. Read it out loud and have someone else read it. This is important because you may have skipped a word. So basically it's proofread and make sure that everything makes sense. So if you are stumbling over reading a sentence, then you've probably missed a word or two. So just keep that in mind that you do need to read that out loud. Also, we didn't mention it here, but kind of tying it back into keeping it simple. Make sure that you've got everything in that consistent layout, because there are things called ATSs, which are applicant tracking systems. Applicant tracking systems are a computer program that pre-screens your resume before it makes it to a live body. So you can put in specific criteria when you're working with an ATS of people have to have this percentage match to my criteria to make it through the initial screening. And so by keeping it simple and all of that, you can have that information saved. So, or excuse me, you can make sure you're getting through that screen. So again, just something else to keep in mind. If you have questions, and I've said it twice now already, I know, but if you have questions about applicant tracking systems, again, please reach out to us. We're happy to help you. The final thing on here, and the final thing that we'll end with, is to go to the clouds. If you go to Google and search for a word cloud generator, what I think is an interesting tool, and you can see an image of one on the screen, is that you can take most, like basically from your education down, and copy it off of your resume and put it into a word cloud generator. Then click generate, and it's going to show you the words that are most prominent in your resume. So that lets you see, visually see, are you conveying what you're wanting to convey. So if someone is looking for a candidate that is strong in coordinating, teamwork, helping others, then this word cloud would be good. If they're looking for someone who is a solo worker, I can't think of other ones, of other examples. But if basically the opposite, they don't want people that are influential, they want people that are more go with the flow. So looking at this word cloud lets us see, are we aligning? Does our resume align with what they're wanting us to see, like what they're wanting? So you can look at the job description and the word cloud and see, do the two mesh together, or are they conflicting with each other? So I think, again, this is just a good tip and just a good way to actually visually be able to see things. This ran a little bit longer than 15 minutes, but I do want to remind you guys, if you have any questions, please reach out to Tech Career Services at mail.wvu.edu. We are happy to help you with any of these things. And again, we're here always to help you out. And you can also go to our website at careerservices.wvutech.edu for any of those resources that we previously mentioned. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.